All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the onocoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host, and we do coffee Monday through Fridays. Well, most Monday through Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So speaking of which, we probably will not be able to do a live stream tomorrow. My cousin is moving from one house to another, and she's asked me to help her move, or basically she wants me to drive the truck, at least. I hope it's only just driving the truck. I would prefer to drive the big truck and then not move anything. She says, we'll have it all loaded up by the time you get here at 10 o'clock. And I was like, that still sounds like I have to move stuff. Because one thing about family, they never quite load up the truck in time. So how y'all doing today? Welcome back to the show. Yesterday, we went to the Food Market Coffee in Columbia, Maryland. But really, originally I was going to discuss today's topic then. But since we were heading out that way, I thought, you know what, forget that. Forget this topic that triggers me. Let's go to the coffee shop and see wonderful coffee being made by wonderful people. So that's what we did yesterday. Today, though, I can be triggered. But before I get triggered about this, so a little background, there is an article that came out yesterday morning from a website called Perfect Daily Grind. Perfect Daily Grind is this website that does a lot of coffee lover chatter. And it's a good read. I find out about their articles because they put it on their Instagram feed and I'll read it. And then like this particular one really just kind of makes me so irritated to hear about. And one of my good friends, Spencer Turr, who you might have seen in the SCA Expo videos earlier this year, and especially the early three of them, I think, him and I are walking around the trade show floor looking at items like the stuff from the egg board and the Indonesian coffees, as well as the Ugandan coffee. And he's quoted in the article, because Spencer's a consultant up in Vermont. Craig, yes. So the article came out. It's written by a guy named Thomas Wensma, and he's just the writer, I think. And I have a link in the description below, so you go straight to it. Because if you go to so here's the thing: if you go to Perfect Daily Grind's website, yesterday it was right on the front page. You go there this morning. I was looking for the link. I got to dig really deep. So I put the link in the description for you to read. It's called Why Starting Specialty Coffee at 84 Points Would Pose More Challenges Than Solutions. So evidently, there are people in this business that, okay, let's rewind. 20 plus years ago, this group of guys started the Specialty Coffee Association of America, which was a very grassroots, bootstrapped organization. And the idea was to promote specialty coffee, which they were talking about. And the idea was that they would have this 100-point scale that we talk about today. And any coffees that would be quality enough to score 80 points and higher would be considered specialty. Prior to this, there really wasn't that kind of grading system for coffees. But now there wasn't. So over this 25, 30 years that this has happened, I started in the business not too many years after this was really started to be implemented. And pretty much most of the industries, especially on our end of the business, is traded in this way, based on this 100-point scale. With really any coffee below 70 points, you're not even really looking at it. Like the scoring, if you ever look at the SCA cupping forms or CQI cupping forms or any of the cupping forms, there's nothing really for 70 and below, because the scale starts at like 70. So, but it is a way to differentiate commercial and premium coffees from specialty, or especially from those two. Devin, how are you, man? Good to see you. How's things? Baldhead says that the SCA changed the scoring system, though. I posted about, I got a lot to think about that. Too. Well, we'll go to that later. But this, so the idea is that specialty coffee is 80 plus points. Now, these are things that industry-wise, not industry-wide, but industry-wise, we're looking at these attributes of the coffee in the score sheets just to delineate the qualities of the coffee, right? It's not necessarily about how much value you're going to place on the coffee, how much you might like a coffee, right? It's really just about looking for qualitative evaluation of coffee. Of course, as specialty coffee has developed, and specialty coffee has become specialty coffee. And I say that because when I started on the business, someone along the way coined the term third wave coffee, and my generation of coffee people are third wave people, much like I'm a Gen Xer and other people are millennials and what do they call those? The ones with the shaggy hair and the flannel, hipsters. So I'm a third waver, partially because I'm just of that era of entering coffee and coming up in coffee. I'm also third wave in that I was very involved with working and defining standards for that. But now, third wave is, people always say, what's fourth wave? But I think third wave has morphed, has progressed into specialty coffee. And everyone talks about specialty coffee. And it's become a very elevated thing. So I believe that this drive or this idea of raising the cutoff from specialty at 80 to specialty at 84 is driven by people who are too enthusiastic for their own good, right? And like I say in the title, I think these people should be drummed out. Well, okay, yeah, drum them out. Because it's not like, and I get it, right? Like I get the idea of why people are in this mode, because they're so excited about specialty coffee. They're so excited about quality coffee, and they want everyone to have quality, and they only want quality to be done. But just mucking shit up. Like, it just mucks everything up. Like, and well, let's get into it. But first, before I get too triggered, let me go and let's brew some coffee, because we need to brew coffee. So here's the thing. We talk about specialty coffee. We talk about this quality. Everybody wants to have, beautiful, like 87, 90 plus coffees, blah, 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 blah. And that's perfectly fine. But take this coffee here. This is a coffee that's imported to the United States by Gold Mountain Coffee Importers. Nice group of people. And they work with this particular coffee comes from the Matagalpa Community of Coffee, which is a group of coffee farmers in Matagalpa, Nicaragua, or around that area, that pool their coffees together, and they sell the coffee as a whole. So this Sippy Specialty Blend from Chariots, right? So this coffee is, this is Equator, wrong one. This other one. This Sippy Specialty Blend, okay? This is a coffee that comes from the Sippy Falls region of Uganda. Again, it's going to be like this Matagalpa coffee, a lot of individual farmers that have small plots, some even less than a hectare, because they're growing coffee, but they don't necessarily have enough coffee to sell directly, or they don't necessarily have the financial support. They don't have the financial resources. Maybe they don't necessarily even have the educational resources in some cases, right? So they come together as a community, or in some areas they call it co-ops, or depending on how they have it structured, and they bring their coffees together, and then the coffees are blended together and sold as one. And that's how they get the quantity. And they're getting some kind of money from their farming. And brew. So we're going to brew, I'm going to try this Equator blend, because we haven't really drank that much at all this time. Yeah, Craig says, get off my lawn. Exactly. Anton, what's going on, man? I don't know much about this topic, but if I had to guess, based on what you told us at other times, you will say that this is unfair for the farmers. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And this kind of thinking is always driven by, so it's typically driven by coffee dweebs that are first world. And they're working in their little narrow world of like, I must have the most beautiful coffee possible. And everything else is shit. And has no place at the table. Or it could also be being driven by very high-end producers, right? The producers that are like very well capitalized, very well educated, part of their 1% of their nations, trying to drive their revenue higher at the expense of everyone else, right? We see this in Panama with the best of Panama, or the geisha, whatever, the best of Panama, I think it was, where if you look at those people that are trying to prevent non-normal processed coffees from entering the competition, these are the guys that are getting thousands of dollars per pound. So there's a connection there that cannot be denied. All right, let's try some of this. This is the Equator blend from Uganda and Chariots. Very kind of Chariots to send this to me. So many years ago, in 2007, good morning, Mom, I was in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, attending what was then called the East African Fine Coffee Conference. And this is 2007, so I really had started into the whole specialty coffee and third wave in 2003, so I'm less than 5 years in the business. And like we talked about before, that's like the most dangerous time for people like me to be involved in any kind of project, because you've learned enough that you think you can do something, but then now you also think you know it all, right? And so there I was in Ethiopia. We're having cigars one night. I'm sitting outside having cigars outside the Sheraton in Addis with this guy who's from the Netherlands, who I just met, but he was a green coffee broker. And we were talking about it, and there I am pontificating, like, oh yeah, all those, we should get rid of those other coffees or some stupidity, right? And he was like, oh, you know what? He was very patient. And I'm sure I've said this before on the stream before, but he was very patient with me. He was like, he was very kind. He was like, he's like, all coffees have a home. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, because he broke it down. All the different grades of coffee have a place. And we want those coffees to go to every place, because some places like prisons, may only want really low quality coffee. Some places, like commercial roasters, want a certain level of quality to meet a certain price. And then there's people that are like you, meaning me, that want really high quality and are willing to pay for it. And I was like, and I don't know why I listened to him, but it was really, I guess it's a longer conversation, but it really made an impact on me, because he was talking about how all coffee has a place. And I was like, you know what, that really does make sense. Okay, so yesterday we were grinding, and I thought, 2 days ago, or maybe I wasn't grinding on the show. I was grinding coffee, and I thought it was a little bit too slow. So we're going to speed it up a little bit by going with a little bit of a coarser grind. I really like this speed. It actually makes me very pleased. Okay, let's put this back away. All right, so we measured out, I think, 24.5 grams. I don't remember now. I wasn't paying that close attention. Okay, so we're going to take we're going to be using our Benjerong ODZ, or the ODZ Benjerong, whatever you want to call it. And Craig says, all coffee finds a home. That was said by Thompson Oil. You know, that guy, Tom, you know, he's also very, very smart. A very, very respected guy in the business. A little bit crazy, socially a little bit awkward, but very, very respected. Like, I admire what he does very much. Okay, so we've got our fancy, fancy brewer with fancy, fancy base. Thank you, Keone. And we have our very generic commercial coffee filter with a nice specialty coffee. Okay, so let's look here. We're going to, let's put this here again. 336, oh no, tear that. We got everything in there. Now we're gonna add our coffee. Shake, shake, shake. Even it out. 24.5. Oh, there was no, I think that's how much I actually measured out, was 24.5. So that means we have zero retention. I gotta say, you know, watching Omniel's video, there was a lot of interesting thoughts that I picked up from that. That I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about thinking about those different parameters that you guys might be thinking about and looking at when you're brewing coffee. Okay, so we have our scale, our water. So I'm just feeling it dropping in temperature. Like we did at one time, we got it around to 204 degrees before starting to pour. Okay, let's do 80 degrees now, or 80 grams. So how's everyone doing today? Everything going well? The other day I was brewing, and I don't know if it was here. No, because yesterday was the first day of the week. So we started out at the food market. So I must have been brewing. The brew session of this that I was thinking must have happened over the weekend when I was just brewing something myself. But I was kind of gunning it rather than trying to stretch it out. Maybe today we'll do more of that gunning. But even though I was gunning it, we still ended up at 3 minutes, 30 seconds. So how we normally do it is 100 grams per minute. So right now we're running faster than we normally would. But I'm just trying to keep the water level the same so that all the coffee is continually saturated throughout the brew cycle. Dylan's is at, hey, what's up, Dylan, man? How do you switch cameras like this on live? So basically, it gets a little more complicated. I have two cameras. Normally, most days, it's just two cameras. Sometimes there's three, sometimes there's four, depending on the need. And what I have is the main cameras here. That's on a tripod, and this camera that flies over that has our overhead shot like this. These are both, what are we now? 287, 225. Oh. These are all connected to what's called the ATEM Mini Pro, which is a HDMI source switcher made by Blackmagic Design down in Australia. You can get them. I think you can get, there are 3 levels of A10 Mini Pro, A10 Minis. There's the A10 Mini, which I think is no longer being made, but you could probably find one for relatively cheap online. There's the A10 Mini Pro, which has more features than the A10 Mini. I would suggest if you're thinking about buying a switcher like this, go at least with the A10 Mini Pro. And then there's the A10 Mini Pro ISO. The ISO in that one means that it will, if you plug in a hard drive, so that's the big thing. The A10 Mini Pro will record to a hard drive. So if you put it in an external hard drive, it will record to that. We are coming up on mark 355, which allows you to record as you're going, and you can switch between the cameras and it'll record all the switching. And if you watch if you look at my other channel, the Ono Tech channel, there's a series that I do there called Festool Fest about tools. And some of those videos that are shot here in this position are actually shot, and there's the first 3 or 4 are live streamed recordings, but the ones after that are actually recorded using live switching in the A10 Mini Pro, and then I edit out some of the parts, some of the switches, right? The A10 Mini Pro ISO, the ISO means isolated recording. So it will record to a hard drive every channel the entire time, so that you can go into your editing software and if you want to edit it together, you can now do different cuts than you would have done live. And you can do the cuts live still. So if you wanted to record it while you were live streaming, you could do all that and still get your individual tracks to edit from. So it just offers you more versatility. Now, there are other products out there by OC and others. I haven't really kept up with it because now that I've had this, I really haven't paid attention to it. But if you want to find out more about it or learn about what's new and up to date, there's a great YouTuber by the name Aaron Parecki, AARONPARECKI. Aaron's I've actually got to know Aaron over the years in doing like the tech stuff. Well, not doing the tech stuff, but just being a viewer on his channel and meeting him at places like the NAB show in Las Vegas, which is the National Association of Broadcasters show, which is a show about all kinds of television, motion picture, transmission technology, and production technology. And so we would all there's a whole group of us that get together every year there. Like I'll meet up with Aaron Parecki, also with Zephyr Moses Blackburn, and then Tom Buck. I don't know if you've heard of him. And so those are something. And Tom Buck's a great person to follow as well if you're interested in learning about these type of switchers and different technology to use in your YouTube production. Highly recommend them. Highly recommend those guys. Like there's also, and then if you're interested in more on the sound side of it, 2 really great YouTubers that I've gotten to know over the years also is Soundspeeds, Alan Williams down in Atlanta. I think he's in Atlanta now, or maybe he's in Carolina. I don't know where he is at the moment. And then also another great one is Curtis Judd, Judd. Like Alan is a working boom operator in motion picture production, motion picture television production. So when it comes to sound for, recording, location sound and things like that, he's excellent. Curtis' background is actually in more corporate video production, but he's also very much a sound person. So he's got a lot of experience in sound in a variety of environments, but really great reviews about sound gear. And another one is that for some like microphones and things like that is a guy named Podcastage, or he goes under Podcastage. Those are really the people that I tend to turn to for YouTube production kind of technology. So I would highly recommend, checking their videos out, and they have really strong knowledge in those areas. All right, so we've got our coffee now that it's all brewed up. Again, this is the Equator blend from Chariot's Coffee from my good friend Simon Ochin. I've also got a little bit of pastry here because one must have pastry, and it's kind of a mystery pastry because I picked it up in the grocery store, but I did not. I had two. One was cherry. I don't know if this is cherry also or if it might be apple. I thought it was apple, but then it turned out to be cherry. But let's taste our coffee. Oh, nice and rich. Oh, that's nice. A little bit of like richness, good, like strong body. Some good, nice, clean bitterness. I think will go very well with this. With this. I think it's apple. I cannot see. Dwight Raymond is asking, sorry, sir, but are you Filipino? Only on Tuesdays, my friend. Only on Tuesdays. And on Tuesdays is when we drink the the rum, the tanduay. Tanduay. We have tanduay, and then Wednesdays we get really kind of jiggy with it and go for the lambanog. This one's a little bit flavored for bubblegum. I've actually never really drank this. I have some special lambanog that I got many, many years ago from a guy in the Philippines that sold me this big jug. Like, he made it in his house, and I was like, whoa, it's pretty epic, dude. I don't drink that because, man, it is like, it's dangerous. Lambanog, Uganda Waragi, right? Waragi, I think it's called. This, and what else is it? There is also, Where are you? There's also one from, here. This is from Mexico. This is Tonayan. Tonayan. And there's one more that I'm thinking about that I can't remember the name. But basically, it's an aguardiente. And I thought I had a bottle of it here. Anyway, it's a bottle of, maybe I'm just not even noticing because I'm looking at it and I can't really tell because there's so much bottles. Anyway, there's this one from, basically it's an aguardiente from Colombia. These are the alcohols you should not be drinking because, man, they are firewater and they will lead to lots of misbehavior. Another thing that I try to avoid now, or I don't know if I necessarily will avoid it, but one of the producers I know down in Costa Rica, he grows geisha. So he takes the geisha pulp and he ferments it and then distills it into a geisha moonshine, essentially. Man, I tell you what, when we were down there one year, we're hanging out with him at his house. We weren't staying there. We were just staying there. We were just visiting. He's having us over. And he's like, this is my wine. I was drinking the wine. I thought it was wine, right? And then we find out later that it wasn't. It was distillate, not wine. But I tell you what, for me, drinking quite a solid amount of distilled geisha spirits, it makes my español muy fluido. Like, I was just like talking in Spanish, like as smoothly and as beautiful as never I had before. And now that I think about it, perhaps if you ever saw the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Remember the scene where he goes, he's at the club or whatever, and he goes home with his Lamborghini, and it was all perfectly fine and beautiful. Everything was lovely. That was my experience with this geisha distillate, geisha moonshine, and speaking Spanish. I thought my Spanish was just perfect, like perfect Spanish. Other people might, if you were sober, you might remember me more like the crashing the Lamborghini in Wolf of Wall Street. Dwight says that what is your thoughts on Liberica coffees, wildly known in our country as Kaping Barako? So Kaping Barako it's an interesting coffee. I was just talking with a coffee roaster yesterday, and he's from South Carolina, and he was delivering this Royal No. 5 roaster to Matt, installing it at Matt's roastery. And he's just talking about, he's like, "Are you Filipino?" I was like, yeah. He's like, "Man, I love the coffee from Batangas." And I was like, "Oh yeah, nice." He's like, "This is some of the best coffee in the world." I was like, "Yeah, right on, dude." So I think the Barako can be very good. Like I've always liked it. Like in the 90s, I would go and have it and drink at like places like Cafe Figaro and places like that. Mainly I went to Figaro because they have the Silvanas. And if those of you went from the Silvanas are these, I don't like my favorite dessert, but they're like, the Silvanas are these small, what we call Sancerval. And Sancerval are basically layers of baked sugar meringue that are layered with sugar whipped butter, and chopped cashews, and you layer them. Kind of like a daqua, but way better than a daqua. Daqua sucks compared to this. But it's man, I would kill for that dessert. But they have the Silvana, so you can have this truly decadent dessert. And the nice thing about Cafe Figaro, they're super into supporting local product, local farmers, and that. So I would go there and have that. And I always enjoyed it. The Barako that he's talking about is a Liberica-based coffee, which is a whole different kind of coffee than Arabica and a Robusta. I think it can be grown very well if people would, and you could get better quality out of it. But most of the stuff that they do there is, of course, they're trying to get more production out of it, and so the quality takes an impact. But they do natural processing, which I like the way that it tastes. So I always enjoy it. But I think it can be, like, I've had some producers that have sent me some samples when I was there that are trying to produce high quality Liberica or high quality Barako. And I think it's very possible. It's just a matter of, like, how do you get your titos on board who really run the farm to support you to make high quality coffee when they're already able to sell all the coffee they produce at $3.50 a pound? It's a tough proposition. It's a tough proposition. And that's one thing about with the Philippines as a coffee industry that I think is very interesting and unique to the Philippines and different than the rest of the world, is that there's quite a lot of coffee production happening in the Philippines, but the consumer demand internally is so high that almost none of it gets exported. It's difficult, as someone that wants to go and buy coffee there, it's difficult to get to export it, only because it's difficult to get enough quantity to make exporting, not an expensive proposition. That's why all the Philippine coffees we've ever offered, high quality, beautiful stuff. I think it's the best coffee in the Philippines, personally, because I found this wonderful producer that is just hyper focused on quality. Like if it doesn't meet her, like, she called me the other way. She's like, one of my other cousins is in the Philippines right now, and she's like on vacation. So I said to her, "Hey, can I have some coffee delivered and you bring it back?" She's like, "Sure." So I called my friend, and she's like, I told her, my cousin's gonna be here this day. She's like, and then she was like, "Well, you know what? I don't think the coffee's ready yet. I don't think it's that good. Let's just wait a few more months." I was like, I'm not pressed for it. So I was like, "Oh, fine." I was like, "Fine." So this woman is super focused on like producing the best quality coffee possible at like almost no holds barred. So the quality of the Philippine coffees that I've been able to source from her have been truly the best stuff. But the problem is that because the base price of coffee is so high, because internal demand and internal consumption is so high, like we're talking about like what we would consider commercialized coffee for $3.50 a pound. Like not very well produced, not very well sorted, not very well in anything. Just commercially level per coffee, $3.50. And it's like, wow, dude, that's... And, you know, of course, you get Western buyers that come to the Philippines and they're like, wow, this is crazy. This is too much money for coffee. And it's like, you are the same people that talk about we need to pay producers more. And now you're the ones that are bitching about how much that it costs too much. And sure, if you compare this coffee that maybe is a 75 or less to a 75 coffee in other parts of the world that may cost you, you know, 72 cents a pound or whatever it is, $3.50 a pound is a hell of a lot of money. But your whole mission has been, your whole mission to your customers is telling them you want to support the farmer, you want to raise them and blah, 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 blah. Then you should be willing to pay more for the average commercial coffee. Which of course nobody wants to do that because it's bad business, and you know they would have to actually walk their talk, which ties into this whole thing about the 84-point coffee, which really just makes me just upset. Right? Just triggers me to no end, because if you want to raise, so we have a threshold of 80. Coffees that meet that threshold get a little bit of a premium. And this is good for farmers. Now, if you wanted to have, like I remember we were in Guerrero, Mexico, right? We're at the very top of this mountain, and we're meeting with these people that are part of this what they call a grupo de trabajo, a working group of people. They weren't really a co-op per se. They were just a working group of people, of very disparate producers. Some producers, like one or two producers, were fairly well capitalized, so they had a lot more resources. So they even had their own drying mill, you know, and the other ones didn't. Like some of them were just like, one guy was like, had so little that he was on the mountain harvesting his coffee. He didn't have enough money to build drying patios. He didn't have enough money to build raised beds. So what he looked for on his property was these like rock outcroppings, you know, basically volcanic rock that is not being overgrown by foliage or dirt. And he would put the coffee, the hulled coffee on these lava pumice rocks to dry. And he would be there raking it by hand. And I'm like, what the? And then, you know, so these are coffees that are being produced, right? And this is a group of people that are looking to do more. They would like to do more. Okay, this is almost 10 years ago. So I think their situation has changed. And most of the people in this group sell their coffees to coyotes. And coyotes are these middlemen who come up to the mountain from one of the neighboring towns with a big truck, and they will buy your cherry on the spot, cash in hand, cash money, baby. They're going to give you cash for your crop right now. They're going to give you less than the market price, but they're going to give you cash. Many of these people are doing that, and many of these people hear these stories from the specialty coffee jerk-offs who are like, oh yeah, you know, we're paying $2,000 a pound and blah, 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 and you're going to have all this glory and whatever. And what happens? So here you got these like Western buyers that come there and they're like, hey, you got this coffee. This coffee's nice. Maybe 82, 83. But of course, these buyers are like, we want 85 coffees to produce. And it is possible. I think it's possible for these people to produce 85 coffees, maybe even better. But now you're talking about to take this coffee that's maybe 82, 81, 82, 83, and you want to bring it 85, 84, 85, 86, is going to take more effort, more time maybe 2 months more time, that this guy's got to sit on his coffee and tell his kids to go suck it and go work in town so they can get their meal rather than getting money from the coyote today. And here's the thing. So like, here's how Western buyers talk about this bullshit, right? They're like, okay, this coffee, we're cupping this early harvest, sample lot, and it's nice. It's like 82, 83. We would like to buy 85 coffee, and we'll pay you a differential of whatever differential they'll talk about. It'll take produce maybe another 2 months to make it. But here's the caveat. Me, the green buyer, I'll pay you a differential if this coffee can become 85. But if it doesn't, I won't pay you the differential. Fuck you, suck on it, is the basic idea. And this is specialty coffee. These are all the specialty buyers, well, most of them, not all, but a lot of the specialty buyers think like this. They're like, hey, you can work on it and do all this extra work, but if it doesn't work out, fuck you, we're not gonna pay you any money. We're not gonna pay you anymore. I mean, there's one big specialty coffee person that my friends would tell me that they started their business because they basically screwed a container out of all these farmers in Ethiopia. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Sorry, I'm all getting out. I get all right. Like, this is what really makes me trigger in the business. Like, this is really what triggers me in this business. And it's like, you've got, which is, I'm totally against that. Like, I remember one time I was talking with my friend who's the producer in the Philippines. So we were having this discussion about this coffee, and we're just talking. We're sitting around having tea or something, and I was like, "What are these farmers like?" Because she was at the time she's working with a bunch of tribal farmers down in Bukidnon, which is in the southern part of the Philippines. This is some of the best coffee I've ever had worldwide. And these guys are like, they're hardcore. Like, these are tribal farmers working their tribal lands with wild-grown Arabica-style coffees, what eventually became designated as Kalasan Sweet. Elongated beans, really interesting stuff. And I normally do farm visits, but I didn't do a farm visit there ever because she was like, yeah, if you fly down to Cagayan de Oro, and then we'll drive, and then we have a hut you can stay in. I was like, no problem with the hut. But then, to get to the farm plots, the actual place where the coffee is. And she's a fit woman, right? She's a fit woman. I'm a fat, you know what? And so she's like, yeah, it takes about 2.5 hours to hike there. And I was like, I am not hiking from the road into the mountains 2.5 hours, because her 2.5 hours is my 6 hours. It'll be like a 6-hour odyssey just to get to the land. And then they're like, so these guys go up to this land, they harvest the coffee, they hump it back because there's no roads, there's no real trails, you can't drive there, you can't really bring a mule. Like, they're humping this stuff back. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going. One thing you have to realize in life is that you have to know your limits. Like, no matter how badass you think you might be, or like you want to take pictures for Instagram so that you can show all of your guests that, like, oh yeah, I went to the farm. No, God, I'll probably die up there. So, but these guys will hump it back. And the thing is, they would leave the coffees because you couldn't harvest it all because it's just too much. And you had to go, it was just too much work, too much labor to bring it down. But I asked her one day, I said, so what happens to the coffees that don't meet the grade? Like, when they sort it all out, they'll sell me and the other buyers, who are mostly from Japan, the coffee. But what about the rest of it? And she was like, oh, they just float it in the river. And I was like, float it in the river? What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, they take the coffee, whatever's left, they put it into woven baskets and they wash it. They float it in the river and wash. So they stick the basket in the river and let the river wash it. Let the river run through it. And I was like, what? So I was like, oh, okay. So that was when I was like, okay, look, next season, or the season that was coming up, I was like, this is the coffee that I want us to produce this year. I want this river. I want you to do the river wash processing. I want you to put the coffee in the river and wash it like they would do it for themselves. And she was like, well, yeah, she was like, well, we've never done that before. And I was like, I don't care. Like, let's go for it. Let's try something nice and interesting. And I told her, I said, here, you tell me the price. I'll pay you up front now. Because I already know there's a risk involved, right? Like for me to ask, like shit for the regular, wash processing or whatever, natural processing, whatever she's doing, she'll do that because, she's got other clientele that are going to pick up all the coffees. But like this is going to be exclusive to me. And I'm like, okay, so, and it costs like twice as much as the coffee did normally. But I was like, okay, this is how much we need. And you make this coffee and I'll guarantee that I will take delivery of this coffee regardless of how it turns out. Like if it turns into total crap, I'll still take delivery of it. Or at least I'll still pay for it. So I paid for it up front. And then, many months later, it finally came. It was amazing stuff. Amazing. Like just so different. But this is the kind of thing that irks me about industry people, is that they want something special, or they want to ask producers for something special, but they're not willing to commit to it. And they're willing to ask these of producers that don't necessarily have the resources to actually do it. So the risk for the producers is tremendous. Now, we're not talking about producers that are like a lot of the producers that I work with that are fairly well capitalized, quite well educated, and more statured members of their society. Those producers can produce quality coffee year in, year out because they have the resources to do it. Like on the other side of it, like I remember this one time I was in Colombia at this auction, and here's this woman, this small campesino farmer. She's the ideal example of what all coffee roasters want to tell their customers, right? They're like, here's this woman, she's got this small plot of farm, and she brought it to the auction, and her coffee was so good, it got $30 a pound, and she's like, it was amazing for her. Like it did all this for her, and it's like, okay, that's cool, that's a great thing. Like here's this, but she is one of those stereotypical campesino type farmers, which means that she's small plot, not as well educated, definitely nowhere near well capitalized, used to probably selling her coffee for $1.50, $1.75, $2 a pound, maybe $2.35 a pound, maybe. Suddenly gets this windfall of a small, however many bag lot of $30 a pound and some kind of notoriety. Great, that's awesome. Nothing wrong with that. When I met her, it was the year later at the auction again. She now has produced this coffee last year that got $30 a pound and was wildly acclaimed. However, she doesn't have, like I said, she doesn't have all the resources. So that coffee that she produced the year before might have been her anomaly. She just happened to pick this up at the right moment, did the processing at the right way for that moment. But she doesn't necessarily know how to do it. She might not necessarily tracked it all, because the coffee that she put to auction the next year didn't even get a bid. And it's like, these are the kind of, to me, this is the vulture mindset of specialty coffee people. They're like, oh, we like this coffee, we're gonna pay a lot. We're gonna pay this money for it. And you, the farmer, you're awesome. You made this great coffee, you're amazing. This is amazing coffee. But next year, if you don't produce exactly the same thing or better, fuck you. Go suck on it. And that's exactly the message that's sent to these people. No big deal. Like a friend of mine was just telling me, they had been selling to one of the big roasters, one of the big specialty roasters for quite a long time, and their relationship soured. And which for them is not a big deal because they've got a lot of clients. They've got hundreds of hectares of farm. It hurts that they don't have this client, but what really messed them up was that this client who they had a 10-year relationship with just kept pushing them off. Like they were calling them early before the harvest even began. It's like, hey, we want to just talk about what you were looking for delivery this year. And they just kept blowing them off. I guess they had new buyers or whatever, corporate buyers, blew them off for all these months until finally they're in the middle of processing all the coffees and they're like, oh no, we're not going to buy anymore. Well, you should have told us when we were asking you 6 months ago so that no big deal. we would have still a good relationship. And now, now they're pissed off because rightly so. Now they've got to scramble to find someone that wants to buy these 2 extra containers. And this is the scale that's different, right? These people we're talking now container loads of coffee rather than like bags of coffee from this woman who's like, $30 a pound. Holy crap. I've had this windfall. But that was the one time. It's like a winning the lottery one time, and then the next year you're poor again. Oh, Dwight Ram says, you're awesome. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Just discovered your channel. Oh, welcome. Good to have you. Oh, thank you for subscribing. Anton says, I would love to try a good Liberica. I had one so far, but that was too fermented to experience. So here's the thing, Anton. If you're getting Libericas from the Philippines, 95, I don't know of any Libericas in the Philippines that have not necessarily been naturally processed. I think everybody's naturally processing them. There may be some new forward-thinking ones that are not. Actually, I'm just thinking now that. Oh, I was thinking this is a coffee from the Philippines. This is the one that won the coffee competition, the best coffee competition last year. Figured the Garces. This was the #1 coffee last year from Bukidnon, but I was thinking it might have been Liberica, but it's actually Catimor. So never mind. Never mind on that stuff. Never mind on that stuff here. But there are some good Libericas. I don't know who has any of them here in America, though, or actually maybe even in Germany. I don't. And I don't know in the Philippines who would ship you. If you're really interested, I would reach out to, maybe go online, and there's a place called Commune, Commune. They are a coffee shop in Manila. There's also Yardstick in Manila. There is the EDSA Beverage Group. Who else is out there that might have this kind of coffee? Those are more of the specialty coffee roasters. And I know there's more that have emerged since. There's a guy in San Juan called El Capitan, E-L, like El, the captain, but Capitan, Kapitan. Raymond, so he might have some. I don't know if he has Liberica though, but there's a whole thing. Sometimes in the Philippines, sometimes within a country, you'll have people that are really into specialty, and I've seen this a little bit in the Philippines where they're so into it, but then they kind of eschew some of the local stuff because it's not as nice, right? They want to look to. The problem with the Philippine coffee scene is that they tend to look externally, right? They tend to be obsessed with like the Barn from Berlin or El Cabra or all these other. I don't really know who they're obsessed with because I don't even pay attention to, honestly, I don't pay attention to those places. They'll look at those places and think that is the goal. And it's good to use, and I think it's good to be inspired by people that you admire, but not to mimic and exactly try to replicate necessarily. And I say this as being someone that did replicate my favorite coffee shop. So, take my advice, take it with a grain of salt. But I mean, I think that you need to develop your own style and develop your own confidence in what you're doing by actually doing and not necessarily worrying about what these people ascribe for you, right? Like the whole specialty coffee thing. You must have this 84 thing is you must have 84 coffee. And that's the thing. You want it to make people. These people evidently want to change designation from 80 to 84. So now you're going to exclude everything else that the people have. And to get coffee to 81, just to get above 80 is a significant thing because you know why? Most people in America and most people in the world are drinking this. They're drinking Folgers and this kind of quality or lower. This is what people drink. This is what we're fighting against. We're not fighting against 82 point coffee. We're fighting against this. And even this is the part that's really, truly kind of screwed up, is that we fight against this. This is also made by small plot farmers worldwide, people that are struggling daily, just like specialty coffee producers. So while you can poo-poo on all this kind of coffee all that you want, it's still being produced by people that struggle day in, day out in developing nations to produce coffee. So, you can spit on Folgers, but put some respect on it. Not because it's great, but only because there's actually people behind it. There's still people behind producing this coffee. No matter how much you might think coffees like this are shit, there's still people hard at work worldwide trying to produce the best product they can to make as much money as they can so that they can feed their children and hopefully provide a better future for them. That's what the world is filled with. And that's what I think these people who are talking about 84, raising the threshold to 84, these are the people that hate that they're fighting against that. Pretentious dweebs that want to be like, oh, we want to make coffee more exclusive. Why? Make it more open. We want more people at the table. Of course, more people at the table means that, you don't get as much glory. Baku says he's made it to the second half. Welcome. We're doing well. I'm triggered. We're doing well though. And Golf Fun says, I woke up ready. I'm ready, babe. I'm ready. Craig says more processing to clean the coffee. Yes. I think Tim Wendelbo or Thompson once said that the fairest thing is to buy all the coffee produced by a farm co-op, regardless of grade. And I think that's a very noble thing to do. I mean, I would not be in a position to do that because, I think that it becomes, if you have, so in my case, I work within a spectrum of coffee, and mainly it's and it's not really a spectrum that says that it's 80 to, or it says that it's 84 to 87 or 84 to above. It's just really what do I like and what do I think our guests will like. But then if you were to buy all the offcuts, how do we move that, right? I don't have the mechanism to move it. Tim, on the other hand, with an import company, does have the mechanism to move things like that. So it's easier for him to do that. But also the other side of it is that as I've gotten to know a lot of producers, and talked to more industry people over the years, it's like I find that, let's say a producer that produces quantities enough of the range of coffees, they do have outlets for those already. Like, so you've got the specialty coffee buyers and you've got more of the commercial buyers, and they're all buying the coffees. So I don't necessarily worry too much about that because I think a lot of that is covered already. I could be wrong, but at least with the farmers that I've worked with. Anton says, yeah, I got a new coffee from Cafe Masha a few days ago, and they actually brought the entire, that's excellent. That's excellent. Of all the grades, is that correct? And buy from the same farm co-op multiple years in a row, and start about the weird. Oh no! I hope you don't hope it doesn't damage your computer. But no, I do agree with that as well. I try to work with farms producers over years. Like I want to work with them because it's just like having friends. You meet someone, you're like, oh, this person is cool. I like hanging out with them. But as you spend more time with them, you get to know them. Maybe you learn that person's a jerk. You don't want to hang out with them anymore. But you might find out that, hey, we get along well, and that relationship becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like, it reminds me of like one year I was with a bunch of buyers down in Central America, and we were at this one farm who I had worked with for probably about 3-4 years by that point. And I think these guys had longer relationships. And they were like, well, we can go down. We're tasting the coffee. It was like 83. And they were like, 83, $2.35 at the time. And they were like, I don't know. And they're like, we're talking when we're at dinner, or we're talking at night, drinking, whatever. And they're like, I don't know if I'm going to buy the coffee. I said, why? I thought $2.35 is a reasonable price. Well, because it's like, we can fly out. If we were to fly down to Colombia tomorrow, we could get it for $1.90, similar quality. I said, I get that, but That's not the point. To me, that's not the point, right? It's not, the point is not to always buy the cheapest coffee, but to buy, I think, the coffee that gives the most return. Because as with anything, if you work with someone more and you have value with someone as friends or whatever, you get a little bit better treatment, right? Or you get better response from them. And that's, to me, that's all part of the relationship. It's kind of why I don't really buy, my friends are really surprised because I don't really buy much online. Like, I don't have an Amazon Prime account. I hardly ever buy on Amazon. Like, if I was to look at the transactions on my Amazon account, we're almost at the end of the year. I have less. I would be very surprised if I even had 10 transactions. Actually, I have less than 10 transactions. I would be surprised if I have 6. That's how rarely I buy online, because I like to go to the stores. I like to meet the people. I like to build relationships with the owners of the store. So, because you know what, they'll take care of you better. At least that's my thought on it. Mustafa is asking, what does 84 and 80 mean? Okay, so in the world of specialty coffee, there is a 100-point scale. Technically, it's 100-point. Really, it only really exists from like maybe 60 to 100. And you'd have to, if you look up online, the Specialty Coffee Association cupping form, you'll get to see the form that most people are using to evaluate specialty grade coffees. And the specialty designation applies to coffees that are graded 80 points and above. Now, specialty coffee, the meaning of specialty coffee is just to differentiate the qualitative aspects of coffee from premium and commercial grade coffees. That's really all that it means. What it has become over the last 5 to 7 years as specialty coffee is this elevated specialty coffee pretentiousness that you'll see. I think you'll see a lot of YouTubers talk about, that not necessarily talk about it, but they may be embodying it, right? And so, and what the topic today is about is that there's an article in the Perfect Daily Grind, which is a coffee website. You can see the link down below in the description. And in the article talks about how there's a certain segment of people that want to change the minimum designation of specialty from 80 points to 84 points. Which really doesn't have much, which I don't see as having much benefit for anyone but those who want to generate more exclusivity. It will hurt farmers that are struggling to produce specialty coffee. It may help the truly elite farmers that are making thousands of dollars a pound. But for the most part, it doesn't really do anything for anyone. It's kind of like this new specialty coffee value assessment thing that the Specialty Coffee Association has been pushing for the last couple of years, which kind of Craig alluded to earlier. This is something I follow. I had a video about it that we released over a year ago about it. You can look it up in the channel. But in that one, we have interviews with SCA staff, which I think they were kind of irritated with me because I kind of asked them some harder questions. Like I want to, like, I'll be honest, I don't see the need necessarily for this coffee of value assessment thing, this CVA they call it, because it's not going to change how people buy their coffee, right? So one of the arguments for the CVA is because the cupping form is too simplistic. It doesn't account for all of the different attributes surrounding the coffees, social values and other things, which is a fair point. But as a coffee buyer, I don't need to score that part of it, right? Like, I'm looking for qualitative assessment of the coffee. Is this coffee of a certain quality? And is it of a certain quality that we agree upon? Like, I'll sit around with buyers and we'll talk about the coffees we taste, and we'll talk about score, but like, oh yeah, I give it 83 or I give it 84. And with any coffee, you may have a 3-4 point swing, depending on how you interpret. You individually could have the same coffee, be served the same coffee and taste it 15 different times, and you're going to give that coffee a score within a range. It won't always be 83, 83, 83. It'll probably be 82, 84, it may be 83, depending on that moment. So it's not so the scores are not absolute. But this whole SCA new system, it comes in a 68-page manual, and it has 4 separate sheets for you to fill out per coffee. I'm like, look, dude, I don't necessarily want to take the time for a coffee to evaluate the coffee that I want to buy, that I'm interested in buying, to do all of this stuff. Like, I don't care about that. Maybe I'll do that in my description after I bought the coffee for the website and for the bags and for all the literature. We'll generate that then. But at the moment, we're not necessarily worried about that. So it's making something that's relatively simple, but difficult for like newcomers to adapt. Meaning that in order for you to be in a position where you're like, oh yeah, that's 83, and do it with confidence, you've got to have a lot of time in the saddle, cupping coffees, evaluating coffees amongst other coffee professionals to get feedback on it, to kind of what they call calibration, but not really calibration, just kind of get a feel for where you are in your range, right? Like you might be sitting there drinking, and it's also about like you're tasting coffees, and you might love this coffee on a personal level. You're like, oh, this is amazing. But qualitatively, maybe it's only like 83. But you're like, oh man, it's amazing. So 87. And everybody around you is like, 87? Like it's got this problem. Then you're like, oh yeah, but I love it. There's that difference there. So, and by having all these extra forms and all this extra data, it's not going to change how I buy the coffee. Like I'm still going to buy what I think will fit our coffee program best. So, yeah, I'm just so irritated with specialty coffee. This is why you don't see me like loving specialty coffee all the time on the shows. I'm like, stupid. It's so stupid. Golf's asking, how close to the vest does coffee folks keep their overseas bean supplies? You know, this is an interesting question because some do, others don't. I don't. Like, if you look at our website or if you get some of our older bags that are fully printed, we tell you everything. We'll tell you the farm, the producer, where in the country, where in the world it's from, the elevation, the beans, the blend of beans, the roast profiles. We'll tell you whatever you want to know because there's no. It's not like in the cigar world, right? In the cigar world, everyone's obfuscating everything. And I'm just like, people really can't replicate what you do. Like I can tell, and this is why I say this, because in the coffee world, I can tell you my blend. I can tell you the coffee that we're using. Like right now, let's say the Espresso 99 is a coffee from El Salvador. I would have to look up the phone. I don't remember that offhand. It's 70% El Salvador washed coffee to give us that chocolatey body, and 30% this washed Honduran from Efren Reyes and his family, right? So the Salvadoran coffee is something that I get a little bit more from an importer, but the natural processed coffee, I work with them. That coffee I work with directly. And I can tell you this, and I'll tell you, we do City Plus roasting on it because you know what? If you wanted to replicate this blend, you probably could get something close, but you're never going to replicate it. Exactly. No way. There's just no way. You don't have the same roaster. You don't have the same conditions. You don't have the same coffee. You don't have access to the same coffees as much as I don't necessarily have access to the same coffees that other roasters have. Right. So there's nothing to be lost by sharing our formulas because there's nothing secret about it. There's nothing truly unique to this. The unique part is the commitment to making it, right? To sourcing the quality of coffee, to being committed to paying whatever it costs for the quality that we want. The time learning how to do all of it, the time putting it together, the time roasting it, the equipment being used to roast everything. These are the important factors, not the farm. The farm is just one little aspect. It's an important aspect. But even then, it's like, like let's say our cold brew, what we call the Perla Negra, which is a anaerobic processed coffee, which is very different than the anaerobics that you're getting today. This is like early years of anaerobic. We started working with the Mirish family in 2014 to produce this coffee. They actually came to me about it. Elian was like, I want you to try this coffee. And it has this beautiful milky character that I thought would be great for cold brew. And they produce that for us pretty much every year. You would have to go to them to get something similar. They might not sell it to you, at least not in the same way they produce it for us. Or maybe they will, who knows? But I'm not that worried about it, because the thing is that how I feel about it is that if you're the kind of person that is willing to go to the same extremes, then I would rather know you and be friends with you than like hate on you, like, because there's very few people that are willing to go to extremes. Right? It's why I like people like John Piquet or Brian Lowe. These guys are nuts. They're so extreme. I like to know them because I like their commitment to what they're doing, because nobody else is willing to do that. Everybody else is trying to find an easier solution to it. Like one guy we were talking to recently, he's like, yeah, I make this concentrate of like coffee, and you can like use this to replace your iced lattes. So you just pour this in, add the cold milk, add your ice, you're done. And I was like, that's cool. But God, that's not what I want to do. Like, shoot me in the head, cut my throat, because I could do that all day and probably make a lot more money, but I would hate myself for that. Like, I would just want to die. Like, just kill myself already. Anton says he also bought it at her price, and the farmer said that it was the first time in, really, gosh, that is sad. That is sad. Golf's asking, we already talked about that one. Craig says, exact opposite. Some even publish all their input and processing costs in transfer. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about this side of the business. And Musa says, they sound subjective. Scoring is subjective, but to a point. Like, and this is why I say that, it's a cupping coffees and scoring coffees is a difficult proposition for the uninitiated, because you're kind of cupping in a vacuum. If you download the form and you're like, okay, let me see, how do I figure this out? And one of the things that we try to do is try to assign a score to a description, right? So like extraordinary would be like 10, excellent would be 9, very good would be 8, good would be 7. So if you're thinking in terms of, let's say, body, I thought it was very good body. That's one way to start to think about how to assign a score to it. The other side of it is that it helps for you to go out and cup with other people and discuss those things. Like if you have the opportunity to go to your local coffee shops and they're hosting like free cuppings or just cuppings in general, go there and try it. And you can talk about the different attributes that are to the coffees and what they would score. How would these people that have more experience than you evaluate this coffee? And then you kind of can use that as a guideline to help inform your thinking on how to evaluate the coffee. So that let's say like, let's just say with body, let's say someone's like, this is an 8 in body, and you're tasting it like, I don't know if it'd be 8, maybe it'd be 7. And then you just and then you talk to more people that are cupping with you, like, oh yeah, I think it's an 8 too. And then, the more people that say that think it's an 8, perhaps you might think that, okay, maybe I need to consider that as being 8. And over time you build your confidence and your knowledge base in what you're doing. Like I remember my really first big cupping was in 2007 at also the East African Fine Coffee Conference. And I did the Ethiopian Taste of Harvest, which was, I think it was 75 coffees. And this is a full SCAA cupping, which meant that each coffee has 5 samples. So 75 coffees times 5 samples, and I tasted every one. And I'm tasting with my friends like Dwayne Sorensen from Stumptown, and a bunch of other guys that are there that are really well, they're super well regarded people even at this point in our careers. very experienced, but I'm the neophyte really, and I'm just copying along them. They're talking about it, and I'm listening. I'm not giving too much of my input because I'm still at the time relatively new. So I'm like, and still developing my chops. So I'm just listening and I'm tasting and trying to absorb as much as I can, just so that I can help to build up my knowledge base and my taste base. So if you're interested, that's really that's one way to approach it. Because that's kind of how you eliminate subjectivity. So when I go out with like coffee buyers, other green buyers, we're talking about coffees, a lot of us will talk about the cup score. Let's say like, oh yeah, so what'd you give it? So maybe 84. Oh, okay. Got it. And that kind of, and after you have a certain amount of experience, that does tell you a lot about the coffee. Is that a coffee that you might want to consider more, or maybe not necessarily consider more? And doesn't mean that you not wanting to consider that more doesn't mean that the coffee's bad or unsuitable for someone else, just not necessarily suitable for your particular coffee program or your particular situation. Anton says the next thing we're going to get is AI to rate the coffee. With no doubt, that's probably going to happen. I mean, they've already got the whole iPads and everything to, all you got to do is put into a chromatograph and it should tell us what's what. That would be a funny experiment for the stream. Get the AI to rate the coffee. Oh, I wonder. We should try that. I have to look. I have to learn more about AI. Again, I'm a curmudgeon, so I don't really pay attention to things like AI. Oh, speaking of which, curmudgeon, I've got a couple questions for you guys before we end. If you were to have a tamping mat, I think we talked about this yesterday, but what are the important tools that you want on a tamping thing? Omniel and I have been talking about what tools are important to you. And let's say tamper-wise, what size tampers are you using? 57, 58, 54, 53, whatever they are. I'm interested to know that. And then secondly, if you were interested in coffee classes, what kind of classes would you be interested in? I'm working on a program right now where I'm thinking about a program to develop for our space to do in-person coffee classes for people, not necessarily professionals, but consumers, enthusiasts. And I'm interested to know like what kind of things you guys would be interested in experiencing. Maybe we can figure out some program for that. Those are the two big questions I have. Also, another thing to touch base on is that we will not be having a live stream tomorrow. My cousin is moving and I have to drive her truck and probably move, furniture. And she wants to do it in the morning, so that's going to take up my time. Although we might have a stream on Thursday. Thursday, if you're not familiar, is a big holiday here in the United States. It's called Thanksgiving, and it's the big holiday. It's actually the biggest holiday of the year, where people do a lot of traveling to visit family and spend time with family. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to do one on Thursday. If we will, I'll put up a link that morning. If not, then we should be back Friday after this, right? Noku says, love it when I tune in and get to peek behind the... Oh, nice. Yeah, it's just rantings of one guy that's hated by quite a few people in the business. Anton says that Coffee Maker people do private online cuppings for their subscription coffee, which is, that is cool. That's online subscription cupping. So I guess they set up parameters for you to set up your coffee to cup with them. I guess you're cupping in real time with them. And is it just one of those things where you're brewing coffee as you would brew it at home, or do they have certain protocol that they ask you to follow so that you can replicate as much as possible their experience? There's no curtain, just too much alcohol. Yeah, there's just too much alcohol here. I'm under no illusions that by the time that I die, this will be consumed. It's just a sad fact of life. They have a small protocol, but they keep it simple. Okay, good. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. That sounds like a great idea. All right. Oh my gosh, we're at a minute, almost an hour, 20 minutes. So they also talk about their brewing recipe, the origin region, and that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Maybe we'll start doing that at Spro, on the Spro channel. All right, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for listening to my rants and raves about the things that irritate me the most in this industry. But we're back again at the latest on Friday at 10 a.m. like I said, tomorrow I've got to do some moving, and then Thursday is our holiday, so I don't know if I'll have to get the time away to escape from whatever family stuff we have planned. But if not, Friday it will be. Anton, good to see you. Gautam, great to see you as well. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're here in America, or have a great week, the rest of the week. Dewan, good to see you from Indonesia. Hope things are well, and see you guys next time.